Welcome to another episode of Humanly Plausible with your hosts, Roly and Richard from the Pink Collective.
Yep, the revolution.
The revolution, y'all, will not be
That's when we had to come back.
We just talked. I
Yeah.
mean, you mean that wasn't being filmed?
Yeah, but you know what?
That would have been
bring you
good.
back and back.
That's some
and have a
good
return.
stuff we had right there. It's always the
yeah.
conversations or the meetings before the meetings.
But we never know what's going to come out that
no.
box. Yeah.
I mean, it was recording, so I got it.
Oh,
so
you did?
Yeah, it's live audio.
Oh,
Yeah, Rolly never says anything.
Gotta watch.
I never
watch
say
it like a hawk.
I never say go because I like to kind of ease into it. But so yeah, I think we could go ahead and launch. But thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's kind of we've gone
great.
360 now, where you first brought me on as your guest on your where was that radio that
In
radio
Boca.
station in Boca. That was cool though.
It was.
Yeah. So
4 years. 4 years.
Yeah.
Every Tuesday.
So I'm proud to say I was a sponsor of that show.
very
Supported
nice.
my
I'm
friends.
grateful for that. That was
Supported
amazing.
my friends. High five.
High five.
That's
Me and
it.
Jordana go way back when I first was an art director.
Okay.
So that's kind of been the trend lately. I'm bringing back old friends, so people know at least I've been around the block. And that it's been a minute.
And then Richard has no old friends. Basically.
No, we have.
You're right.
We brought Richard's sister.
My sister, my dad. So mostly it's my family
That's
that comes
wonderful.
on.
No.
I know we've had some. That's
The
true.
mayor,
Josh Rydell.
Josh Rydell. So so I guess we have pretty good company. So,
Absolutely.
So anyway, so we'll start today with kind of just you giving them a little background on the 5-minute version of who you are and what you do. And what you're up to, because I know you're just like me. We're all over the place and doing all these great things. Very passionate person. So I'm excited to have you.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here with both of you, and I love our history and that I'm here today, so thank you for that. I'm Jordana Foster. My company is Ready, Set, Go Beyond. I am a business and executive coach for business owners and executives that are struggling with next steps, identifying where their strengths and areas, they could call them weaknesses, but areas for improvement, and possible succession planning within the scope of their team, and just the coaching for that is pretty powerful and transformational. And I love that one-on-one. It's very vulnerable, and my clients know that I'm like a safe deposit box. So what happens in that room stays in that room, and it's I appreciate the trust that I've been able to get from them and create and build and to help them because they're already successful.
Right.
It's just that it's hard to ask for help when you're successful, and so the ones that do, they're making such incredible moves and progress, and I'm thrilled to be a part of that. The second piece is that I do training for teams. It could be sales teams. It could be any teams, any groups that are not engaged. They're not performing optimally. They're not communicating. They're not connecting. All of those things, teams need someone from, a lot of times they have trainers on the inside.
Right.
What I have found, and I'll say that's great, not trying to step on any toes, but what happens is they're not telling them everything. And so having that authentic conversation, having me come in with a fresh set of eyes, with my coaching and training experience, I help them to see things that they're not seeing, to have conversations in a safe, judgment-free space, and it has been extraordinary what we're able to accomplish. And then I can go back with I'll bring managers in the room later, but not for most of the training, and it's been phenomenal. So those are roundtable discussions that I have along with the training that I always recommend. And then I do I love to transform managers. I know both of you are going to hear this a lot with your clients. Transform managers that are put in positions out of necessity, out of somebody leaving and them say, we have a spot, we have a chair, we need you to fill it. You're good technically at what you do. And they have no business and no experience managing and leading people. And that is really a sweet spot, as well as the communication, because you can't lead people if you don't know how to lead people. You
Right.
don't tell them what to do. You show them how it's done. And
Yep.
so
Right.
that's another area that I love to be able to be a partner with, not a one-off, to get to know the organization. And then I do my speaking engagements. I like to elevate rooms and give them actionable strategic steps and not just have kumbaya moments, which I love kumbaya and feel good. But if you feel good and you don't do anything with it, then I don't want anyone wasting their time, and I don't want to waste mine.
Makes sense.
So
Yeah, I think because Richard had asked me like how far we're gonna get to ask you stuff, but I think so. His brain is probably going as fast as mine.
No, it is.
And you're preaching today,
I
so
got questions.
The
I got
choir.
questions. Yeah.
no,
I
I'm
hear
saying
it.
like you came ready to talk, and I
Yeah.
think it's funny because we've had you come on now when we in our past couple of spots that we've done, it's been about kind of that leadership and what that means, and I think can you shed light maybe on because chances are, and I'm sure you run into it, like those leaders out there that are leading or CEO or whatever manager, or like let's say they're obviously in an executive position that they're leading a group of folks. How do they come to this realization? Like maybe I'm the problem, right?
they don't come with that
Right.
realization. Mm-hmm. That is not how they come. Usually it's about the infrastructure.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense, yeah.
It's about the people. I'm looking at the retention and attrition issues. I have people leaving. I have people staying which truthfully, that's a whole nother topic because when they're leaving, that's visible and they're leaving. And I always ask are you having an exit interview? Because I really want to find out why.
Right.
And most of the time, get your things and go, and they don't find out why. And then what do we do when we don't ask?
Right.
We don't find out and fix the problem. So with regards to people staying, if they're staying but they're being quiet, these are all communication is like my oxygen. So I need that, and I preach that, and I teach that because it's so lacking, and it starts from the top, but it's also from what we've seen and experienced. And if somebody doesn't correct us, or we don't know who, we don't have someone to learn from, it's not being taught anywhere. That's why I love what I do, because I am that person who is going to coach and train and teach that. So they don't, most leaders, if as successful as they may be, they may not see it yet. And so it's through discovery sessions and conversations that tough conversation comes about. Okay, maybe you need to it's not just having a meeting. Maybe it's having individual conversations with your team. Why are people leaving? Do you know why they're leaving? I'm a big question asker.
Right.
And that is the most telling of all. And I always go into the companies and organizations to ask as many questions as I can, because then it's revealing what either they're not seeing or they choose not to see.
In your experience, what would you categorize? You mentioned communication. What would you categorize as the most prevalent toxic traits of leaders?
Let's rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, man,
The show's called Humanly Plausible.
Yeah.
Let's
I just want to dig in.
Wow. Say that question. Ask me that again.
Sure, I have no problem asking that again.
I like that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
In your experience, what have you seen as being some of the most common toxic traits that leaders possess and bring into the work environment?
I'm sure because we see them a
Yeah.
lot, and then, I think denial is one of them. You were talking about it just now.
I think denial, I won't even start with that one. I think that sometimes leaders rule. Do you hear the word I'm saying?
Definitely
And
intentional.
I think
know.
that positionally, sometimes when people are in positions of authority, they are not always careful with their tone, their timing, and their messaging, which is what I focus on so much. And a big piece of it, and this isn't just internally with your internal clients, meaning your staff.
Yeah.
This is with clients who are like we have all had clients like that. We're just like they poke you, and you're just so. for me, and I know you both focus on, I focus on and have learned and trained on emotional intelligence and how we react emotionally when we're charged. We react instead of respond, and that hurts relationships. It breaks trust. It breaks the common ground that we have. It questions everything. And so I think that might be one of the areas that I've noticed, that as far as being reactionary rather than responsive.
Yeah.
And then another one obviously is denial. But the other thing that I have found is that when things are uncomfortable, which is a lot.
Come on. Here we go.
What do we do?
Well, I think when it's uncomfortable, we either avoid or we react impulsively.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Dismantle.
Yes. We're breaking foundationally what we've worked so hard to do. So when somebody doesn't have the tools or a coach to talk them through, I've had clients who call me, I'm getting ready to do this, let's talk this through.
Yeah.
And I actually do like a role play with
see,
them. I do.
situation? I love that.
Situational
That's awesome.
role playing is
Yeah.
what I
do that with
love. I love
That's
it.
so true.
No,
You do that.
but
Yeah.
see, you guys are great partners. I become that outside partner to be able to talk. So
100%.
when you say one could be reactiveness, right? And because of emotions, the other one that I see just as much, if not more, well, probably equally, is when they don't do anything because they're waiting for the right time. It's not the right time. I don't know what to say.
Decision.
Went so by delaying that, it hurts. You know, if you're not going to do it in a timely manner, the moment has gone. We know that.
Yeah, that's that
and
avoidance.
so that avoidance, just like when you talked about denial, about, you know, an exit, and, you know, well, if they left, let them leave. They're going, why did they leave? If somebody's unhappy, if they are being quiet, like there's so many signs that I share with my clients or I coach and train on, because if we're not aware of the signs, then we're not seeing what is there.
Right.
Then how do we do something to I say fix it, to resolve it? But you need to acknowledge that it's there. We need to recognize and admit, and that's a hard pill for some leaders to take in, and especially new leaders or people who've been in positions for a while, and this is the way I've always done it.
Right.
So this is the way I'm always gonna do it, and that isn't necessarily how things are today.
Yeah. And again, that could go, you know, on your personal life and work
everything.
life, because it's a key word there is being aware of what's happening, right? And just you know, like that understanding and learning is crucial. And I think that even like when we do the role play, like usually I'll call Richard and I'm like, hey, I want to do A, B, C, D. Can I do that? He's like, nah, bro, don't do any of that.
But how important is that you went through that exercise and that you bounced it off of each other?
Yes.
It's important. I think once again, I think it's you know, it I think goes back to leadership. Is your leadership commanding or collaborative?
Right.
You know, where I'm always right, so I don't have to ask anybody. I don't need to collaborate. I just do it because I'm the leader and that's what I do.
Right.
Whereas if you're collaborative, it's being vulnerable enough and self-aware enough to say, hey, bro, you know, I'll just say to Roly, bro, so let me ask you a question. Suppose I don't really think you should do it that way. You know what I mean? So...
Me more than him. He typically he's pretty good about it. He's very controlled. He's very paced.
But I think that's what works, because we have the same goals,
right,
and a lot of the same similarities and values and all the different things that matter. But he's super passionate, super like,
charged.
Let's do this now. You know, and that's what makes him a great at what he does. And we talk about it all the time in terms of creative. But I'm a little, you know, I think part of it too is a little age. You know, I'm
a couple of years.
Slightly older than him, and so he'll just kind of
not many.
It's a wonderful balance, though, and I think that, you know, I've even worked with partners, and it's so important that you both have. You can't have. I'm not going to say can't. You should not have the same exact person as your partner, because just like in a relationship, any relationship, you need to balance each other out. You need to check in on each other and say, hey, what do you think of this? And we don't have all the answers. And I think the leaders that are humble enough to say, no, look, we need to own. It's so crazy. I'll tell you, the post that I posted today is so fitting. We need to own what we do well and be confident in, what we do and how well we perform. But we also need to be open to learning and growing and adjusting. And the ego, which I always talk about, comes into play, because if you know everything, then why do you need anybody? And you're going to be, on your own, and nobody's got. But if if you kick around ideas, or I kick around something with some of my coaches, and I just or my clients, it gives you another perspective to consider before you make the wrong decision. And we'll still maybe make it. We're not perfect. We never will be, but we're going to strive for excellence every time. And I think that if we just are more willing to hear somebody out and not be, how's that going to make me look? What is that going to, that's a strength. Most of the most successful people in business or in life have coaches. They have people 100%. And it's an investment. They want to, and, from a partnership standpoint, in a business, we need to be able to run things off of each other without feeling that there's a judgment, and that if you don't talk it through, what could happen if you say the wrong thing? You went with A instead of C. You're not considering everyone in the room and possible outcomes.
100%. So,
these are great questions.
So before we get into the box, because we got to get into the box.
Too?
Yeah,
the box. The box.
Listen, we're just getting warmed up right now.
I broke the format. But I thought it was very important, especially that we have you, because it's something that we talk about a lot. And so the coaching aspect, like for instance, I do triathlons. So when I got into my first triathlon, I was getting into uncharted territories where I wasn't like a good swimmer. Right. I really wasn't a good runner. My strength was cycling. But regardless, I had to hire coaches to help me in those disciplines, right? To really show me like how to get better. And so I think since we have you, like if somebody, like what does it look like to engage you? Is this a long term, like for folks who've never done this before at all?
It's great. Yeah.
I think it's important that people understand how to approach you. Like, hey, I want to talk to you about, like, how does it work?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. I love what you said, though, first about your training, because you had your one lane, your cycling, which is your strength. Yeah. And not so different from in business. Correct. We all have our strengths, right? And there are always other areas that we need to build those muscles.
Right.
We got the muscles
100%.
Here. So when you have somebody, it's not just performance. People don't think about how mindset plays a role in our success, how communication. They don't talk about those things, but those are the things. Those are the reasons why people stay or leave. That's the reason why people end up hiring you, because of how you communicated your story and your message, how authentic you were. How confident you were, how you handled yourself. So anyway, I was just wanted to piggyback on what you said. So I usually recommend a 6 month. I usually don't do less than 6, because 3 months is just when things are starting to really, there are habits that need to be changed and broken and adjusted, and mindsets, and there's a consistency. I usually work once a week. Most of my clients are on Zoom. I have a few in person, depending upon proximity and scheduling.
Right.
6 months, I have clients that most of them, the majority, renew the other 6 months because they're seeing the growth and they're not done yet. I've had clients for years. I've had clients who stop after a year, but 6 months is usually that where they're starting to see it, and then they'll renew. I don't force anybody to do a year commitment. They actually come and say, I don't want a gap in this. I want to keep going. And they're noticing that how they're showing up. People are noticing, not just them, but people are saying, you're handling yourself a little different. You're speaking with a little more clarity.
Right.
You know, it's not just, it will affect the bottom line, but it really is about the interactions when they network. I train and coach on networking and sales. I mean, how we interact, not having it be so transactional and relational, that affects everything. So that's kind of how people can possibly,
Okay, so we're gonna have your information on our website.
Yeah, definitely reach out to
Question.
Jordana. And I think we're all works in progress. So even if you think you're doing well, I think we all can benefit from getting some mentoring, guidance, and some really good support.
Well, I think coaching in
appreciate
general
that.
is just huge. Because having that outside perspective.
But see, there's a mindset that comes in sometimes that people say, that's very expensive. But if you don't invest in you, why would anyone else invest in you? So it's just like, if you show up and you have what you need, then you're going to attract what you need, and you're going to show up in the rooms and be in the rooms that you need to be in, like with the people that, you surround yourself with.
I think there's we're going to jump into the box, I promise.
Please. I know.
The collateral damage of it. So like, let's say you're starting a business and you're somebody that is not, let's call it aware, or you don't have that mindset of growth to grow other people, then what you're doing is you're just going to continue to add people that later on are just going to leave. Versus if you start early, like with one, let's say it's just you and me working, and I got a coach that's working me through. So like that, at least I'm not, whether it's a partnership or whatever it is, I'm not destroying that other person that's helping me grow the business. So what I'm saying is it's important to hit that early.
Oh, it's so important, and I'll tell you, and I know we're going to go into that, but when you hire people or partner, when you're hiring, I'm DISC certified, so from a personality and behavior assessment, and it's not only important when you're choosing your business partner and your team. People will bring me in, or I've worked with my existing clients and who they're selecting and growing their team. But it's really important, not only from a hiring standpoint, but to assess who you have right now. Yeah. To make sure they're in the right seats.
Yes.
And if they're happy, like there's the communication. Are you happy with what you're doing? Is there somewhere else that you see yourself in our company that, you don't feel that because if you don't say that, they're looking online for a job right now on Indeed because you didn't ask them. Yeah. And so that's just a little tip right there.
No,
that could save somebody's talent in a huge way.
We've had a situation where we told clients, hey, you have a problem, and they've ignored it.
I literally was recounting in my mind, and I think
it was a big problem.
Yeah. And I think, interestingly enough, and why I'm glad that we're connected to you, because I think in certain cases we've worked in certain organizations where part of them getting the return on investment of their marketing dollars and sales would be for them to invest money in leadership development.
100%.
Because that sets the track. That's the way your team moves forward. And, so these are some really good points. And
I appreciate this comment. You could tell I'm as passionate about what I do as you guys are. And if we don't fix it, they talk about how much it costs. What does it cost when you don't develop leaders?
I totally see that.
How do you have an exit plan for yourself? Or how are you when somebody decides to retire? Yeah. How are you going to fill that spot just because that person over there has been with you for 5 years? Are they? So you have to ramp them up and give them what they need so that they can be successful, because they don't want to fail either. They want to do right, but you can't put someone in a position where they're not equipped to handle responsibilities and succeed. You're basically setting them up for failure, which makes me crazy.
Makes me crazy.
Absolutely.
All right, so here's the deal. So you're going to choose. You're just going to pick.
Okay.
So these are all AI generated.
Okay.
So we don't
AI.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know what you're going to get. So good luck. Let's see what happens.
Good luck.
And the show begins.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's really small. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay.
No.
How can businesses ensure their internal communications are as effective as their external messaging?
I mean,
come
we couldn't have gotten a better person.
Hello, you've been listening to us?
It works all the time. It's like a magic box. It's
I don't
amazing.
even know how that just happened. So, How can businesses ensure their internal communications are as effective as their in external messaging? So this is something that I know for a fact personally. I'm going to say personally. I'm not even going to say the company or anything like that, but I'm going to say personally, like I'm passionate about. And this is really why, like this is, I think as an agency, this is what really separates us, is that the core focus is to that. So, but what I mean by that is that we are not going to create something that you're really not.
Yeah.
Because eventually you cannot sustain it. And we see this. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, so
that's a hard conversation for you to have with somebody, because they
right.
really believe that either they are or they will get there, but they can't get there without help and support, and oh, wow.
Well, I think it's almost like to be truthful. I think it's almost like that's usually what drives us out of the relationship.
I agree.
Is that we get to the point where we keep probing and probing and probing and digging and digging and digging, that eventually you get to the point where, like, well, we haven't been 100% truthful.
And I think our discovery process is sort of it's built where we're talking to many of the stakeholders in the organization. Right. We're not just
even part of one of those discovery sessions. Yeah. Yes, it's pretty in depth. It's very, and
I think we do it in a manner so that I think there are agencies that may just speak to the decision makers because they're the ones that are signing the check and tell us, who you are, blah, blah, blah. But once again, and it's kind of related to the question, we need to talk to your customers, other stakeholders if you have a board, as well as your staff, to see who you really are and their consistency with who you're telling us you are, with who everyone that deals with you on a regular basis in different stakeholder roles sees you as. So I guess this is connected to that question, is your internal communication and the way you communicate to your internal teams, is the internal culture that you set up consistent? Because let's take a very generic external message. We treat you like family.
Right.
Yeah. And then, what does that mean, if that's your exterior message to the people out in the world, to the public, but what does that translate to in the way that because most people we know do not treat their staff like family, nor would they want to be.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and that's the culture that I think there's a big disconnect. And I think that both sides of that coin with regards to communication need a lot of work, because oftentimes, the companies and organizations are focused so much on the external client, right? And you're saying the messaging, how we're presenting ourselves, we treat our people like family, this is our culture, this is how and they're not. Right. And they make promises that they can't deliver, or they do, but it's costing them their people because they make a promise and then they don't have the people to back up what the promise entailed. And so I always love to focus on the internal customer first, because if you don't get your people right, then you can't get the external right, because there's it might be perceived that you do, but at some point it's going to catch up with you. Yeah. Because, like you said about those clients, it's you have to be aligned. There has to be a synergy, and who I am in this interview is who I was when I had my radio show, and who I am with my are you the same person in every environment? Are you authentically the same leader? Is your message for your brand, for your company, the same throughout? And do you treat people? This is a big one. Do you treat people the same way, no matter what position they're in, and whether they're a client or an employee? And it's a respect. It's a how we speak to one person should be how we speak to everyone. And I smile at everybody. I always ask how they're. I don't care who you are. I don't care what position you're in. You could be the CEO, or you can be, helping me get my lunch. It doesn't matter. And I really think that now more than ever, having a consistency in how we treat people and ask questions. And like I said earlier, when we were talking about the disc, before you even make a promise to a potential client and you're saying, oh, yeah, we can do that. We can remember our old days. We can do that. We can do that. What do you need?
Right. We're trained that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you need to do that and who needs to do that? And then get their buy-in and say, okay, this is what we have coming up. This is going to be huge for our company. This is going to require a lot of late nights and, early mornings and some weekends but this can take us to the next level, and there will be bonuses involved. And I'm going to need you. Who's in for this? And and having them be a part of it is the communication from an internal standpoint that needs to take place to rally the troops, to get them excited, and then you have the support and buy-in so that you can deliver. Does that?
I think that's great. So I think for the last minute, I think we should try to illustrate what we're talking about, right? Let's talk about with this internal, external, right?
Okay,
so
tell me.
We're gonna
more specifically, like
no, it's
down.
great. Like let's say like we're building a company right now, and we were going to, like let's say I'm gonna start a shoe company in which we're all about treating people like family, right? Let's just say very generalized, right? And so eventually, my goal is to have 50 employees and maybe have shoe stores all over Florida,
right?
And so this is kind of the business plan. So in the next 3 years, my goal is to have 15 stores.
Right. You're going to roll it out. Right.
And my big unique value proposition is that, again, we're going to treat you like family. Not that it's anything out of this world, but we're going to treat you like family since the moment you walk in through those doors.
Right.
Yeah.
So now me as a leader, first of all, it starts with a vision. So I'm the one that's launching this business. So I need to have this vision. But maybe I really don't even treat my own people as so. Like, so let's say we're starting with the first store. So we got a first store, and then so like, how do we now start to identify? Because maybe we are talking to that person that has that one store, and maybe they need to start, maybe figuring out, man, maybe I'm the problem. How am I having, how do we start establishing a culture? Like, how do we? This is general. This is we're just going to have a general conversation.
I'm just going to
add another layer. You can color that.
So, just to build on what Roly started, so
because I want to talk to people that maybe are in that situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and I think a lot of people are in that position.
Yeah. So we often spend time with, after we do our discovery, we then outline, here's your key messaging.
Okay.
And here's your visual identity that will tell the world that this is who you are. These are your value propositions.
Right.
Based on what we heard.
Based on what we heard.
Not what you want for them, but what they told you they...
Exactly.
Right.
But interest and companies, executives, and leaders would expect that from their marketing partner. Now, the question is, to add color to what Roly said, and where a person like yourself would come in, what's your internal message, key messaging? What's the value proposition of your culture? Are those things, should those be documented? Just the way we document the external messaging, should you be putting just as much effort into creating almost an internal culture
But they
plan?
should almost be synergistic.
Yes. So, oh my goodness. Yes and yes to both of you.
Yes.
So, I'm certified with John Maxwell Leadership.
Yes, my man.
One of the amazing thought leader.
Yeah.
So, one of the things, I have a lot of tools in my toolbox. And one of the things that I love, because values are at the core of who we are and who we do life and business with, right? And grow our companies and organizations, is really identifying what our values are. What are the values of the people that we work with and the clients that we want to serve and collaborators and everything. So I actually go through an exercise. I don't even know if I brought them. It's a values cards exercise. And I sit down usually at either before a training or even in a discovery to find out where they are. And we go through this process of looking at, I think there's like 40 cards and we go down to 10. And what's very interesting is that it's very introspective and we all say what we value, but it's about living it
But.
It's about but. There's buts, right?
Yeah.
There's are we living it? Are we breathing it? Are we speaking it? Are we like if somebody asked you who works with you what your values are, would they be those 10 cards? You know, and I go down to 5 actually because I want to get into like the real. I want to get into. So to your points, the value of who you are and your message all has to be so aligned and crystal clear. But then you have to get, and this is where hiring people, you need to know what's important to them. If family is everything, then you can't make them work on the weekends. And that you know, maybe you need, if, you know, there's certain things, that's a given, but there's certain things that they're telling you, but if you don't ask, you won't know. So if we are clear on our messaging from a value standpoint, from a positioning standpoint, externally, we have to back that up. I really think it should be flip-flopped. I think we have to start internally.
Agreed. 100%.
But most people don't. They
100%.
They want. They're so focused on what the external factor is and how we're being perceived. Yeah. You know, every family is. You know, that's we treat everyone like family is what you said, or you know, whatever that might be. Whatever your, you know, we can put things on the wall and say that's who we are. We can have mission statements and things that we manifest, but at the end of the day, it's who we are, what we say. That's really how we're going to bring that to life, or it's going to be a complete disconnect.
Well, and I think just to use kind of what you do as a kind of a metaphor, it's the same way that we hire a coach, but all we do just by hiring you, I think I'm going to get better. But if I don't do the work, then it doesn't happen. And a lot of times we get hired because they think just because we're automatically hired, that's it. Everything's going to change. Right. Everything's going to be amazing.
But don't you know that? And sometimes I have a good radar. I've gotten a lot better with my awareness. When you have those initial meetings, and this goes for all of you too, because when I think everybody should.
The sore subject.
I know. I think everybody should. It's not just about quantity, it's about quality, it's about the right fit. And I've turned people away, and I know you have too, and sometimes later than I should have.
Yes,
right?
That's
and that's a learning experience on our part. Sometimes we want to help people so much.
Yes.
Right? We want to, and that's me. Yeah. I want to help. I know what they can be. I know what their business can be. I know what's standing in the way, but I'm not going to be dragging them across the finish line. And it's very hard to turn that away. So how are you, what are you noticing that when you ask those questions? Because what you said, I'm not going to do the heavy lifting for them. I will support them. I will help them with the transformation. I will equip them with the skills they need with communication, leadership, mindset, all of that.
I'll let Richard speak to that first, because I
you know, it begs the question in terms of, I'm looking at some of our most successful clients.
Okay, good.
Talk about how we get it wrong.
This, he doesn't want to
avoid it. Because, I think I'm doing it the other way around.
Let's say he's very political.
Yeah, well, I'm doing it the other way around because I wanted to say, you know, we're having this conversation, and I can, of course, the low-hanging fruit is when we feel as though we didn't get the connection and the outcome that we wanted to. But then I think it's important sometimes to look, well, what's the difference with the ones that went smoothly, and how were their internal and external aligned, which ultimately is why they succeeded.
Okay.
And I'm thinking about, we have a great community college client in Maine who they not only, once we created their brand and their campaigns, we went to go visit. And
I remember.
And Roly, remember just everywhere you looked and everything you heard and just the culture and climate that they created on that campus was so consistent with not just the brand, but the overall message and the overall culture that one could see was external as well as internal. It was clear as day, you know?
Almost like an invisible line. Like it didn't really, where one stopped and the other started.
But I think...
What was the big difference?
Leadership.
Okay, I was going to say, why did it work?
The leadership, right from the very beginning, And he made
it was clear
changes in the institution because that became the measuring stick internally and externally. I can only keep people here that can support our internal and external message so that the experience holistically is always the same.
Well, how did he measure that?
I think he measured it, honestly, literally painstakingly with his leadership team going department to department and setting standards and making sure they follow through with those standards and really putting, and everyone was aware of the messaging that we were doing, that this is who we are, this is what we're telling people we are,
right.
And so therefore we must be this or you can't be here.
See, it's leadership.
Yeah.
And it needs to not be one person that carries that torch. It has to be throughout, that everybody has buy-in. Remember, like talking about, where are you? What do you like? What do we need to have the buy-in from the people? And if you don't have that, not only with the clients that you might potentially have, I mean, sometimes it could be a struggle when you're talking and I don't know if I could do this every week. Well, if you can't, I'm not so sure I'm going to. I mean, sometimes I'll make an exception because they are ready, and so we'll have a longer session every other week.
Right.
I'm going to make adjustments and concessions if somebody is so committed and ready. But when it comes to individual organizations and that leadership, they have to, those leaders took so much time and were willing to make changes that must have been very uncomfortable and asked questions to find out if people were really 100% in.
Right. And
if they're not, it's been great, and I'll write you a wonderful recommendation, and maybe, not that they're going to fire, but maybe there's somewhere else that would be a better fit for you.
Yeah, and I think also just making sure that the external message and the marketing wasn't siloed, where only the people in sales and marketing were aware of it. It became this cultural expression, a cultural transformation. It was a transformative time that was taken seriously throughout the whole organization. And once again, it was the leadership and then the marketing leadership that made sure that that was the case and everyone was part of this transformation. So that's when it's done well, what it looks like, I think. And it's probably when it's not done as well is, once again, when those things don't happen and everyone involved in the organization is not aligned with what we're saying we are. It's like if you're a car lot and you're saying that we love all our customers and we'd love to get a testimonial from you, but then the car salesman doesn't even want to take a picture with the person who
there's a disconnect.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you just said something, a lot of great things that were so on point, but you mentioned silos. And I will tell you, from a communication standpoint, from a messaging standpoint, leadership standpoint, that is where there are so many, we get so stuck.
Yeah.
Because everybody, this is your job, there's your office, do this, get this done, this is your deadline, everything like that. And so we're so compartmentalized. And so if culturally that doesn't work, unless we're bringing people together somehow to, how is it going? What are you doing? Do you need help? Really, I love those conversations from a leadership standpoint and even at any level, to be honest with you, because if people, there are a lot of people, when you talk about personality styles and everything, there's some people who aren't as outspoken as the three of us. And so we need to hear from them. Right. They have something very important to say, that they may have a suggestion and we're not asking because they're not comfortable or we're not giving them that platform. So those silos allow those people who are most comfortable in those safe spaces to not, they don't want to be put in those positions. Right. But if we as leaders can allow them and create spaces for them to really open up and share, then they're going to be more a part of it. It's going to be much more cohesive. There's going to be more consistency with whatever that messaging is. And, what you just said about the external and internal, those straight, very structured lines that separate the two will be a little more blended.
Yeah.
Because it's not so rigid and...
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I mean... So yeah, there's so much I think we can like
We're gonna
dissect there, which because we
yeah.
love this, we talk about this all the time. Somehow this box keeps feeding us this.
Yes.
So I got to talk to
That
this AI.
was amazing.
I know, I love it. But so last thought, in closing thought, I want you to speak to those folks out there that are struggling, maybe not know it, like maybe something that they just should do a self-check. I think maybe.
So we're in the fourth quarter.
Fourth quarter.
Love fourth quarter. Who watches football?
Come on. Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Yes.
Well, this is where teams are actually dissecting culture. So go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
What happens in the fourth quarter? What happens when a team might not be performing optimally? They go back, right, into the locker room. The coach huddles them all together, which is what I do. And we talk about what's going well, where are we missing, where are we fumbling, where are we dropping the ball, where are we missing our guy to, the same thing should be happening in business, because no matter what industry, no matter if you're a solopreneur, if you have a bigger business, wherever you're at, no matter how successful, I'm finding, and I'm curious to ask both of you, a lot of the business owners or leaders are not assessing and reflecting on, you're not reviewing your film, okay? You're not reviewing your film. Wow. I need to write that down.
Yeah, you do definitely need to write. I like that.
You need to review your film. You need to really assess the last 3 quarters. I do this with all my clients. We look at what's happened, what's went well, what hasn't, what needs to be adjusted. We look at their people, we look at the clients, we look at their networking, and we need to really be honest about the wins and the losses. And this goes for football, goes for business, it goes for life. If we're not taking stock of where we're at right now, then most people just jump into the new year and they're just, okay, I'm ready, I'm leaving 2024 behind, and this is going to be the year. But if you don't know what you did right and what you didn't, and what strategically you want to achieve, like you were talking about the shoe store with how many stores, like being very clear on that. How are you going to know that you've hit your goal? Or how do you know what's holding you back from hitting it if you don't really have that accountability partner or somebody to assess that with you? So even if I'm not coaching you, my recommendation for everybody watching would be take a few minutes right now and just kind of look at your schedule. Go back and look at your calendar. Hopefully you've been journaling and writing things down. That's always something that I recommend. And take stock of that and then see what you want to repeat. Yeah. And what you want to start fresh on and you want to, make changes on.
And I think when you review the film, just to add to that, which
really
I love that.
I really have to do
this is your closing point.
And I'm a visual person. Reviewing the film.
Wow. Trying to close the show here.
It's hard to close with Jordana. She keeps bringing up such good stuff. But when you review the film, I would say you need to review the film honestly and thoroughly, because you can look at that film and say, oh, we're spending money here on this. And we can just eliminate that and we'll save money. But if you don't look at that thing in its totality and all the implications of it, there's a book, Unreasonable Hospitality, that talks a lot about this, where that live band that a restaurant may be paying for, and then the owner says, man, it's costing me X amount of money, I'm just going to get rid of the live band. But then when you see people stay longer and buy more drinks because you do have a live band, if you're not assessing the film correctly and get rid of that live band, it'll be a year later that you realize that was the wrong thing, because all I did was look at my bottom line and not look at the context of my bottom line.
And wow, that's amazing. And I think that for your business,
now you're throwing another closing thought.
I know. But this is a plug for you guys. But for you guys, if people aren't assessing what their marketing and branding is, this isn't just from a coaching standpoint. I know both of you do such an amazing job, and most people don't you don't know what you don't know. So if they don't know what they're missing because they haven't ever explored it, or like with AI, it's a little uncomfortable and I don't know. Those are conversations that should be explored. Just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah. So to explore from a branding and videos and podcasting and all the great things that both of you do and with your company, to be able to help the business owners out there, no matter where they're at in their stage of growth, to be able to go to the next level is so important. And
absolutely.
That's where the assessing comes in. All right, you close it
That's
out.
it. So all I'm going to say, because I don't even have time to say anything now, is I think, like I always remind myself, growth hurts, whether it's physical, emotional, or financial.
For sure.
If it doesn't hurt, it's not good growth.
Right.
It's probably partial or temporary growth.
Right.
Superficial.
Substantial or superficial. Yeah. I think long-term growth is going to hurt at some point.
Just does.
So I appreciate you guys spending the time with us. Hopefully there was some great insight that you pulled from us, because I think it was.
It was a pleasure.
And we will be bringing Jordana
Yeah.
back, because I think we only hit the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
But thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thanks
Take
so
care.
much.